Welcome to my updated playoff predictions heading into week 2 of the 2024 college football season. Every single week of this season, I will give my updated playoff bracket either through a short or a longer video. Now let's start off with my number 1 team. At number 1, I have Georgia. I have them being the SEC championship winner, and I have them being the best team in college football, which gets them the 1 seed. I think it's the safe bet right now to take Georgia as the SEC title winner. The defense looked really good against Clemson, and Carson Beck is back at quarterback offensively. Someone other than Alabama has to prove that they can beat Georgia, so right now I think it's safe to take Georgia at number 1. At my 2 seed, I have Ohio State. They weren't dominant against Akron, but they still won the game 52-6, and there's really not a lot to take away from that game. Ohio State has one of the most talented rosters in the country. They have 9 starters back on defense, and they added Caleb Downs, who is probably the best safety in college football. Will Howard definitely looks like an upgrade from Kyle McCord, so give me Ohio State as the 2 seed. And as my 3 seed, I have the Miami Hurricanes. In the preseason, I had Florida State as my 3 seed, but they disappointed against Georgia Tech. And Miami easily looks like the favorite to win the ACC right now. Cam Ward is going to go off this year, and they look really good at the line of scrimmage. They have a lot of weapons at wide receiver, and this is a super talented roster. So give me Miami as the 3 seed winning the ACC. And as the 4 seed, I have Kansas State. Now this could change soon. Utah and Oklahoma State both look good in their games. Avery Johnson still has a little bit to prove at the quarterback position, but right now I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to overreact to these teams playing FCS schools. So we'll see how Kansas State does when they play Tulane this upcoming Saturday, because that will be a decent test for them. But right now I'm going to stick with Kansas State to win the Big 12 and get the 4 seed. I really like what they have in the running back room with Giddens and Edwards. I like the defense, and I also think Chris Klieman will keep this team consistently good. And I think this could be their year to win the Big 12. So give me Kansas State as the 4 seed for now. As the 5 seed, I still have Texas. I have Texas going 11-1 in the regular season and missing the SEC championship game. But since I have Texas going 11-1, I have them above the 11-2 runner-up in the Big 10 and the SEC. I don't know if they'd put a 2-loss SEC runner-up over a 1-loss SEC team that didn't make the conference championship. But right now, I'm going to stick with Texas as the 5 seed. They looked really good against Colorado State. Quinn Ewers is back at quarterback, and I think that defense is due to take a step forward. At number 6, I have Oregon. Oregon is a very controversial team right now. They played terrible against Idaho. It was honestly embarrassing. But I'm not going to try and overreact to that game. It's only week 1. The game between Oregon and Idaho is going to be a weird game to look back on, but Oregon's not going to play like that all year. We have seen this before. Georgia barely beat Kent State in 2022, and Oregon only beat Fresno State by 1 touchdown in 2021, then went on to beat Ohio State. So I'm really not going to overreact to a week 1 game, because Oregon completely outplayed Idaho. They just could not execute. They outgained them by over 200 yards. The offensive line does look like it has some question marks, but they also had multiple guys out. So I think Oregon will be just fine, and I have Oregon as the 6th seed. And as the 7th seed, I have Ole Miss. Again, nothing has changed so far. I think Ole Miss is going to be an 11-1 team this year, and they'll probably lose in the SEC championship game. That's at least my prediction, but I really like this Ole Miss offense. Jackson Dart and those receivers are going to go off, and I think they take a step forward at the line of scrimmage, definitely on the defensive side of the ball, with guys like Walter Nolan and Princely U. Ole Miss can beat basically anybody outside of the powerhouses, but if they take the right step forward, they can compete with those powerhouses like Georgia and Alabama. And as my 8th seed, I have Notre Dame. Now, we have actually seen Notre Dame play a solid team. They were very impressive defensively, but I also feel like they need more playmakers to step up at wide receiver if they want to go further in the playoffs. But right now, I am going to stick with them making the playoffs as the 8th seed. They have one of the top secondaries in the country. Riley Leonard should be a good leader at quarterback, and he's a tough runner. And Jeremiah Love will also be a beast at running back for you guys. So right now, I'm going to stick with Notre Dame going 11-1 or 12-0 and making the playoffs. Even if Notre Dame is not super good, they have a very easy path to the playoffs, and I don't see them getting left out unless they go 9-3, and I don't see that happening. And as the 9th seed, I have Tennessee. Tennessee looked incredible against Chattanooga, but again, it's just a game against an FCS school. I'm not going to overreact. So nothing has changed with Tennessee. I still have them as my 9th seed. I still think Nico Iamaleava is going to have a big year at the quarterback position, and I do think that defense is on the rise. They have James Pierce Jr. back, and they did a solid job in the portal. So I like Tennessee as a 9 seed. And as my 10 seed, I still have Alabama. I think Alabama will be right below Tennessee because I think they dropped that game on the road to Tennessee this season. so I have Alabama as the 10 seed right behind Tennessee. They also looked very good against Western Kentucky. Albeit they had a bad snap and that was not a good look for Alabama. They had some questionable things, but they won that game 63-0 and the defense looked very good. But they were just playing an average group of 5 school, so there's not a lot to take away from that game. Alabama is still my 10 seed. Kalen DeBoer has been a winner everywhere he has gone, and Alabama should be a playoff team this year. As my 11th seed, I have Penn State, and they did impress me this week. That was an impressive win on the road against West Virginia. A lot of people were putting money in on West Virginia to cover, but Penn State demolished them. I like that Penn State defense. It should be one of the best in the country. And it looks like they got a guy at receiver with Wallace. He had over 100 receiving yards in that game. I don't know what happened to Julian Fleming, the 5-star transfer, but that Penn State offense did look a little bit explosive. I'm not going to take away too much from that game because they still haven't played an elite defense, and that's always when they crumble. So I am going to keep them as an 11 seed, probably going 10-2. But Penn State's definitely a team to keep an eye on. And as my 12th seed, the group of 5 team I have getting in the playoffs is still Boise State. The defense looked terrible against Georgia Southern, but I'm not going to overreact. Ashton Jeanty will be a beast at running back. That Boise State offense looks really good. And it's confusing that they gave up that many points to Georgia Southern because Boise State was a really solid team defensively last season, and they have like all their guys back. They have a chance to prove themselves against Oregon next week. Oregon really struggled against Idaho, and if Oregon has another bad game, Boise State could upset them. I don't think Boise State will beat Oregon, but I still have them being 11-1 and being my G5 team to make the college football playoffs. But let's move on to predicting the bracket. And the first game of the bracket is 5 seed Texas playing number 12 seed Boise State. This will be an on-campus site game, so these games are going to be a lot of fun. Texas will have the home field advantage in this game, and they're going to have a packed house for this game. On-campus site playoff games are going to be unreal, and it's going to be something we have never seen before, so I'm really hyped for on-campus site games. And I definitely think Texas beats Boise State. They're just a way more talented team, and I do think Texas is going to be a little bit better than they were last season. So obviously Texas is going to be a really good team this year. I think they beat Boise State 42-17. The next game is number 6 seed Oregon versus number 11 seed Penn State. This game could possibly go either way, but I still have questions with that Penn State offense and their lack of explosiveness offensively. Oregon should have a really good pass rush this year, and I think that could play an advantage in beating Penn State. So I think Oregon beats Penn State 30-24. Oregon just has way too much offensive firepower, and when they get going, I don't think they'll lose to Penn State. If Penn State just dominates the line of scrimmage and Oregon isn't what we expect them to be, then Penn State could absolutely win this game. But we've seen it from Penn State every year. They're a 10-2 team, and they have lacked explosiveness on the outside. So far, throughout all of my predictions, nothing has really changed. But this is a game I did think of a little bit because of how bad Oregon played against Idaho. But like I said, I'm not going to overreact to that game. I think Oregon beats Penn State 30-24. The next game is 7 seed Ole Miss versus 10 seed Alabama. I think this could be a game of the year candidate. Lane Kiffin and Kalen DeBoer are both incredible offensive minds, and this could be a high-scoring shootout and a very fun game. But in the end, I like Kalen DeBoer and Alabama to win a big-time playoff game against Ole Miss. I just think Alabama has the more deeper and talented roster. And in this stage, I think Kalen DeBoer will have his Alabama team ready to play. So I'm taking Alabama 35-34 over Ole Miss. And the last first-round game is number 8 Notre Dame versus number 9 Tennessee. I've been going back and forth on this game. I've been almost picking Tennessee, but I'm going to stick with Notre Dame in this game. I think their defense is good enough to at least contain that Tennessee passing attack. And Notre Dame having this game at home is going to give them a huge advantage. I do have Notre Dame as the 8 seed, so they would host this game. Notre Dame's wide receivers didn't really impress me versus Texas A&M, but I do think they have enough to beat Tennessee. The defense is really good. Rylan Leonard should be okay for them at quarterback, and Jeremiah Love is going to be really good at running back. And I just think Notre Dame should be a step ahead of Tennessee. I like Nico Iamaleava and that offense, but Tennessee does have some questions defensively. So give me Notre Dame to win this game in a very close one, 30-28. Let's move on to the quarterfinals. The first game is number 1 Georgia versus number 8 Notre Dame. This is where I think Notre Dame comes up short. They'll be able to compete with about any team in the country, but when they play a talented roster like Georgia, I don't think they have a chance. Georgia just has too many playmakers at wide receiver, on top of an elite defense and a great coaching staff. And of course, Carson Beck is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I just think Georgia has too much talent, and that will play an advantage in this game. So give me Georgia to beat Notre Dame by 2 scores, 31-17. The next game is the 2-seed Ohio State versus the 10-seed Alabama. I really think Kalen DeBoer in Alabama has massive potential to pull off some big wins and make it further than people expect, but Ohio State is just too good defensively, and I do think that offense should be good enough to take advantage of the Alabama defense. The 1-2 punch of Henderson and Judkins will be hard to stop, and I think Will Howard will be enough at the quarterback position for Ohio State to make it to the semifinals. I think they beat Alabama 34-24. The next game is 6-seed Oregon versus 3-seed Miami. I am actually very high on Miami, and Miami could have a chance in this game. I've already been buying stock in this Miami team, but they looked very good against Florida. I don't have any questions with that Miami offense. Cam Ward is going to go off. The receivers are going to be very good. They have an underrated tight end. They have an experienced offensive line, and Damian Martinez will be a beast at running back. All around, they should have a top 10 offense in the country. But what impressed me with how they played against Florida was how well that defensive line played and how well they controlled the line of scrimmage. There's ultimately questions in the Miami secondary, but they did a good job in that game against Florida. The transfer from Washington got a big interception, and they had some guys stepping up on that defense. I really think Miami is going to be an all-around solid team, and they can do more than just win the ACC if they get it right. But I do think Dan Lanning and Oregon has a small advantage in this game. I trust where Dan Lanning and this Oregon Ducks team is at as a program a little bit more than I do Miami. And I like Oregon's coaching staff more than Miami's coaching staff. I think Oregon wins this game 34-27. And the final game of the quarterfinals is number 5 Texas playing number 4 Kansas State. I don't even know if Kansas State will make it this far, let alone beat Texas. I don't see Kansas State beating Texas. I'm still riding with Kansas State to make the playoffs, and I think they will win the Big 12, but I'm still uncertain about that. But right now, I do have Texas playing Kansas State, and I think Texas wins this game 31-20. They just have way too much offensive firepower, and they're in a much better place than Kansas State is. There's not a lot to take away from this game. I think Texas wins it 31-20. Now let's move on to the semifinals. Nothing has changed in my playoff bracket from where I was last week predicting this bracket. I didn't really overreact to anything week 1. I was already high on Miami, and I still think they'll have a good season, but I don't see Miami making the semifinals, so nothing has really changed. And the first semifinal matchup is the 1-seed Georgia playing the 5-seed Texas. I have these teams meeting in the regular season, and I have Georgia winning that matchup, I believe. And I think Georgia beats Texas again. I really think Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs are going to be locked in this year. They have 15 starters back from last season, and their defense is incredibly talented. They have a great rotation on defense, and I think Georgia is just going to be too much for Texas. So give me Georgia in a shootout 38-31. Now let's move on to the other semifinal matchup, the 2-seed Ohio State playing 6-seed Oregon. Nothing has changed in my semifinals. I still think the 4 favorites to win the national championship will be in the semifinals. And I have Ohio State and Oregon playing 3 times this year, once in the regular season, once in the Big Ten championship game, and once in the playoffs. I had Oregon winning the first matchup at home, and I had Ohio State winning the Big Ten championship game. And at this point in the season, I think Will Howard is good enough to lead this team to a win. Will Howard won't be the reason Ohio State beats Oregon, but he'll do enough. The defense will be elite, and I do think Ohio State beats Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and I think they beat Oregon again in the playoffs. I think they win the game 31-26. Now let's move on to my national championship prediction for 2025. We have the 1-seed Georgia playing the 2-seed Ohio State. I think these are the 2 deepest and most talented rosters in college football, but I think Georgia wins this game 28-24. The reasoning, they have the better quarterback, and I think they have the better coaching staff as well. Kirby Smart's already proven that he can win 2 national titles, and I like Carson Beck to take this game away. I like this to be a defensive battle, but in the end, I think Carson Beck leads this team to a national championship. So I think Kirby Smart gets his 3rd national title, and I have Georgia beating Ohio State in the 2025 national championship. But anyways, that is going to do it for my updated Week 2 playoff predictions. Like I said, I'll be doing updated playoff predictions every week, and literally nothing changed for this playoff bracket. So hopefully there'll be some changes to my playoff bracket next week. There's a lot more bigger games for Week 2, and I think we'll learn a lot after Week 2. But right now, nothing has changed. I still have Georgia winning the national title. I still have the same 12 teams making the playoffs. But anyways, that is going to do it for today's video. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing and also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.